Just a reminder for those that haven't been following us, we are still open, even though we're primarily working remotely. You can still get in contact with us at any time. You can schedule appointments virtually, over the phone, WebEx, Google Hangouts, you name it. Our contact information is on here. Give us a call or email at any time, okay? We're still here to support you no matter what office structure looks like in terms of the pandemic, okay? Also, as the past 2 weeks have highlighted, clearly stuff can change really quickly these days in the international world and the travel world as far as the pandemic is concerned. So please follow us if you can, at UNLV OISS, both Facebook and Instagram. Be sure to continue checking your UNLV email where we send out regular blasts you've been getting, I'm sure. And also our YouTube channel as well, where Talitha mentioned we're going to be uploading this presentation afterwards. A couple other quick things. I did not mention these last week, but in prior presentations, if you're trying to stay on top and keep the latest information, it's not a bad idea to add these pages to your bookmark on your browser. NAFSA, a professional organization we work closely with, has a fantastic compilation of everything that's going on, although that information is more geared towards staff professionals. ROASS has an FAQ COVID page. Country-specific information, the Department of State, that third link there, has very useful up-to-date data on what are the travel restrictions to and from United States to your particular country, the one that you're looking at. And then the CDC travel information also has travel advisories, flight restrictions, etc., quarantine requirements, depending upon where you may be traveling to or from. A couple other community resources for those that are here in Las Vegas right now. Obviously, this is a financially challenging time for people also. Three Square is a fantastic local nonprofit food bank that has a lot of resources for you. And there's also some really useful counseling psychological services that you might want to use, both with CAPS here on campus as well as the practice. I encourage you to get in touch with them because, like I said at the beginning of this presentation, this is a hard time for everybody. And so you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself mentally as well as physically, okay? So let's get down to the meat of things. So last Friday, what we were discussing was the announcement on July 6th. And that's when SCVP sent out a broadcast pretty unexpectedly, took a lot of schools by surprise, that said all international students were going to have to be enrolled in on-campus coursework this fall. They put in some requirements about I-20s that needed to have specific new language on there. There was a lot, and we spent a lot of time talking about it. Fast forward just barely a week later, July 14th, I think that was Tuesday of this week, right? Monday of this week. Well, there were a number of legal challenges ongoing against this guidance, both from schools and from states across the US. And what happened in court is DHS, or ICE, a part of DHS, basically rescinded. They canceled that announcement. They said, okay, we're going to withdraw it. It doesn't apply. And instead, we revert to the old COVID-19 guidance that SCVP had given to schools back in March, and then they vaguely updated it a little bit in the summer. So that happened, I think it was Tuesday. It's been a long week. It's been quick. So what does that mean, right? Well, first of all, it means that as of right now, and I'm going to use that phrase a lot, as of right now, as of today, because things keep changing, there's not a minimum credit requirement of in-person on-campus classes for F1 international students. And I'm primarily talking about continuing students with active I-20 records. And I will talk about initial students that are incoming new students as well in a couple slides. But for current students here, there's no minimum number of in-person classes, all right? You can be enrolled in 100% online here at Las Vegas this fall at UNLV and still keep your F1 status active. Because of that, the fall 2020 enrollment form that we had sent out last week is no longer necessary at this time. I keep saying that too. So we do not have to send out an updated I-20 that says, you're taking the minimum number of on-campus classes, et cetera, okay? Now, some of you were very great and proactive and started working on this right away with your advisors, and you might have gotten a new I-20 sent to you. If you did, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that I-20. It's not invalid. So whether you did it or not, there's no impact right now, but we're not processing them because they're not required by that guidance that got taken away. What this also means, particularly for continuing students, the old guidance implies, I'm going to say implies because it's not very well written and it's from March, it's not really up to date. It implies that if you are a current UNLV student, somebody who has an active I-20 record, an active CVIS record, and maybe you're outside of the US right now, or you're going to be outside of the US this fall, maybe you can't get a flight here, it's not safe for you to do so. We can still keep your I-20 record active while you are enrolling in online coursework from outside the US. So that happened back in the spring semester too, if you remember. Some of you students who were here might have decided to leave back in March or April because of everything that was going on, and we were still allowed to keep your CVIS I-20 records active when you're outside the US. That appears to now be the case for fall, which is good news. All of the stuff I'm saying so far is good news compared with what we had last week, okay? Now, I want to emphasize there that does still mean you're enrolled in online coursework from abroad. If you're somebody who is not going to be enrolling, you're leaving the US or outside the US and you're not taking online coursework, we do still need a leave of absence form from you for the fall. However, if you're outside the US and you are enrolling just in your online coursework, you don't need a leave of absence form. Okay. Continuing on, ramifications, impacts for current students. As I just said a second ago, full-time enrollment is still required. So that hasn't changed from spring or fall. You do still have to be enrolled full-time. So that's 12 credits for undergraduates, 9 for graduates, and 6 for graduates who hold an assistantship at the same time. It's just that those credits can now be fully online and you're still meeting that requirement as an F1 student, whether you're in the US or outside the US this fall. What else does that mean in terms of OPT applications? So this does get a little tricky and there's some uncertainty here. USCIS, which is the agency you actually request OPT from as a student, it requires you to be physically present in the United States in order to apply for OPT. So if you are a student who's going to be outside the US starting next month when classes begin, enrolling in courses but online from abroad, you have an F1 record, you still have to get back to the US in order to apply for OPT if you're someone who's graduating. I know this is problematic to say the least for a lot of students. I put in here, this is still being talked about a lot and lobbied for in different ways with NAFSA and other organizations, because I understand this isn't realistic for everybody. But as of today, it appears students would need to be able to return at some point this semester if they're graduating this term in order to be able to apply for OPT. We're watching that closely. That's definitely one of sort of the questions that pending out there since Tuesday's decision. What does this mean for graduating students in OPT? But that's where things stand today. Now, I put also another note in here about staying enrolled in in-person classes. So a lot of students, when we communicated this last week, were doing a great job of working with their advisors, both grad and undergrad. The university was very flexible and helpful overall to help students get at least one or more in-person classes, which is what was required at the time. As of today, that's no longer required that you're in an in-person class. But I just want to say, as you've witnessed, situations can change really quickly in the immigration world. We don't have a lot of certainty about what may go on in the coming weeks. So it may be understandable to remain in one of those classes if you're comfortable with it. So that's going to be a personal choice. It's not legally required for your F1 status right now, but I completely understand if a student's concerned that things could change. Do you want to stay in a class, for peace of mind? That's a real legitimate question, and I understand that. And some may be advising that you remain in that class. I've heard of some schools that may be recommending that, but not requiring it of students. Whatever happens this fall, if guidance changes again, positively or negatively, if the campus ends up offering more remote classes or less remote classes, again, these conversations have been had with the whole community at UNLV, the administration, and we're all committed to doing whatever it takes to make sure international students can maintain their status here this fall. Okay, there's a lot of unpredictability there, but we're going to make sure we have a plan in place to help you. All right, so I understand there are probably also a lot of new students or potential new fall UNLV students in the chat. And when I say new students here, I'm particularly in an immigration sense talking about people who have an initial I-20. So your CVIS record is initial, your I-20 probably says initial attendance or maybe transfer initial attendance or even change of level initial attendance. First and foremost, we still have a lot of questions about what the guidance means for international students who are new to attend UNLV this fall. And I will be the first to tell you that it's frustrating and it's confusing. I don't like it any more than you do, and we're trying to get answers. But the guidance that was brought back into place by the court decision this week isn't particularly clear about what some international students are supposed to do. That guidance does specifically say, though, and again, this was written back in March, it hasn't been revised or changed. It said that initial status students should, if they're not already in the US, should remain in their home country. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't take online classes. You absolutely can take online classes from outside the US, whether or not your I-20 record stays active. But that's what the guidance says right now. That's definitely confusing because it's very different from what we were told last week, which was if we put this remark on your I-20 and you had some in-person courses, you could attend. Now the guidance is different. This is what we have today. Making that more confusing is some of you may have had this happen. We're getting reports this week, even before the court decision, that embassies and consulates around the world were starting to open in some places. And some students were getting told, you can apply for an F1 visa now, and you have a chance to apply for a waiver to be able to come here on that F1 visa. I have not seen that messaging change or get updated since Tuesday. But realize that was Tuesday afternoon, time changes around the world, and these are different agencies. So I suspect the Department of State, which handles embassies, visa issuance, they don't have their policies and guidance in place yet either, because they're reacting to this just like we are. They're not the ones that necessarily make this decision. So we're getting that communication from embassies, which is a little bit different. And then at the end of the day, there's also what's actually happening with CBP, that's Customs and Border Protection, at the border when you come to the US. So their enforcement may be different. Last week, they were telling students you had to have the remarks on that I-20. That changed as of Tuesday, but we don't know how quickly CBP would be reacting to that. Unfortunately, the situation is that there's different federal agencies doing different things. And that's just a byproduct of how confusing and unpredictable this situation has been. And we really need clear government guidance for schools and for students right now. But that's where we're at today. And I know I keep saying this, but we're going to have to be patient, all right? Again, as of today, that guidance is saying if you have an initial I-20 and you are outside of the US, that you need to remain outside the US this semester. That's what the guidance says today. You can still definitely do online courses from abroad. That's no problem. We would defer the I-20 presumably to spring when you could attend in person. If you are an initial transfer student, a transfer student with an initial I-20, you're also included in that category. So if you're outside the US, the guidance is saying you would need to remain outside the US. However, your I-20 can also be deferred. And that's actually a special exception because normally transfer I-20s cannot get postponed, but the government is saying that now it could be postponed if you contact the school. Once more, new guidance may be coming out to change this. In fact, I've been reading some rumors, I'm going to call them that SCVP, which is part of Department of Homeland Security, is going to put out some clarification. I think their agency was also kind of caught off guard because suddenly they were legally required to take out the old guidance, but they didn't have a new replacement ready. So I'm hearing rumors that something would come out hopefully within the next week or so that will especially make things more understandable for new initial students. So for those of you that are new initial UNLV students, I'm sorry this is really confusing right now. I really hope we get answers. And believe me, we want you to be here as much as possible. We just have to wait and see what the government's going to tell us in the next week or so. Fingers crossed, we hope. What does the future hold? My favorite slide. I didn't bring my actual crystal ball or tarot card, but all joking aside, this is the information we have today. I can't stress that enough. This keeps changing by the day, by the week. And as I mentioned, we're really expecting some guidance, I hope, to come out in the coming week or so. And we might be back here next Friday again, doing the third version of this to explain, okay, what are our rules for enrollment? What are our rules for initial students? And try to get that information to you. So I can't stress enough, follow us on social medias because we'll post information on there. Be checking your UNLV email, and we're going to get you the information as fast as we can. That's what I can promise you. We're going to do our best to get you complete, definitive information as soon as we have it. At the moment, you're going to have to just be the most flexible person you can be. I know this is really challenging. I don't want to make light of that, but it's just the environment we're working in right now. Okay. So my favorite slide after the last one is questions, and I have not been following the chat. I'm going to turn off the presentation portion and take a look at the chat with the other advisors who I think have been maybe addressing stuff in there. So let's take a look and see if anyone from the team wants to pop in with questions that we have seen that haven't been addressed or things to remind that keep getting asked here. I'm going to look into the chat box right now. Also, it appears was my video off during all of that.
Handled most of the questions that have been popping up in the chat, unless anyone has new ones.
I'm taking a look on there. If you guys have questions now, please throw them into chat, things that we haven't covered. I can't promise we're going to have all the answers, but we will try. What stuff has not been addressed yet?
So Alizy Stumpf is wondering if she's deferred. So if I remember correctly, Alizy, you were going to start this semester, but you're outside the country. If
Correct.
we have deferred your start dates, and you're allowed, so your I-20 will have a start date of January 2021, but you can still take classes online if your department allows.
Okay, maybe I can explain again my question, but that did somewhat answer it. So my question is that I will be having an appointment by mid-August, which is around at the consulate, which is around the start date of school. My question is, should I right away ask them for my F1 visa to start for the fall semester, or should I right away ask them for my F1 visa to start for the spring semester? My thinking with this is that obviously I wouldn't be able to be there for the first month or two, but if I had it start for fall semester, the F1 visa, eventually maybe I could join for October or November. What do you think of this?
With the guidance as it is right now, as Jason is saying, if you are a new student with the new initial attendance I-20, you're not allowed to enter for fall semester at all. So you would have to defer your I-20 to spring, and then you would enter in either mid-December up to the start of the semester in January.
Yeah, and I just would add to that, keep in mind, most of the time when students get F1 visas, the actual visa stamp, that usually gets matched based upon the I-20. So it would probably be valid for a couple of years, is my guess. I mean, it depends on your country and situation. So even if they do issue one while you have an I-20 for fall and you're not able to come to spring, more than likely that stamp is still going to be valid by the time you would enter in December or January. Most of the time, for most countries, they have 1 year or more duration on them you can use to enter. Also, you said you're hoping that appointment would be August or mid-August. Again, I'm hearing rumors we're going to have some news maybe in the next week. So I would certainly hope by August we have a better answer to that. Like, yes, we should definitely change the I-20 to spring. I mean, a couple possible scenarios I'll just throw out there. And again, I don't know which, if any of these will come true. One possible scenario is they do just be very strict and say what we said today. Any initial I-20s for UNLV, you can't physically come here. You have to stay online. I hope that's not the case, but they may say that, in which case we do have an answer, which is we have to move all I-20s for students like you to spring, and you can proceed applying for a visa, come here in person in spring. It's possible they will say instead, initial students like you can come here, as long as you're taking some in-person classes. And then maybe we do need to put a remark on your I-20, but it might be a little bit different than the remark we were talking about last week. It might say students have to take fully in person or partially in person or a minimum number of credits of in person. So there's a couple of different outcomes. My guess is by mid-August, we know what that answer is. Just can't say what it is yet. So sorry,
Jason,
non-answer.
Jason, I have a question from one of the students. In order to take classes remotely, do I need to take a leave of absence? Meanwhile, this student already took a leave of absence. Do they need to take another
Already
one?
answered that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. If somebody already has their I-20 like terminated for leave of absence, you don't need to make a change if you're still going to be outside the U.S. this fall.
But that student had a follow-up question that I can answer. So you do not have to pay a CVIS fee if we defer your I-20 to the spring semester, as long as the current initial attendance I-20 is not canceled. That usually automatically happens 60 days after the start of the semester. So as long as you defer that I-20 before it cancels, you do not have to pay the CVIS fee again. It will not automatically happen unless you wait too long to do it. But you would be in contact with the admissions office, whether it's Lori Filippo in the graduate college or Renee Castaneda in the undergraduate admissions office, to do that within, I would recommend, in the first month of the start of the semester.
There was another question. I don't know if maybe the student can clarify, but they were asking if deferring to spring would affect a summer internship. I'm not sure if that student can maybe clarify in the chat what
I
they're
think
talking
he's
about.
a new student. I don't recognize the name, so I think he's one of the new incoming students, correct?
Yeah, it might be something for your specific program. I don't know if they have a schedule of when you start internships. So it might be something we have to address with your program, but if you let us know, we could try to put you in contact with the right people.
Did you address the CPT issue in the event the students are taking remotely from their country?
So that is a good question. So let's say you're a student who does have a current I-20 and you're going to take your online classes from outside the US this fall. As I said earlier, it sounds like we can keep your CVIS record active during this time. While you're outside the US, when you're physically outside the US, you don't need any sort of CPT authorization. You don't need any employment authorization from us if you're outside of the country. If you're that student who comes back in the spring, as long as your CVIS record is active while you're online enrolled in the fall, and you have the same CVIS record coming back, there shouldn't really be a serious impact to CPT eligibility. It shouldn't make any difference. If your I-20 record stays active, if you were eligible for CPT before you left, then when you come back, you should still be eligible for CPT if you're enrolled here in the spring. Because we're able to keep that CVIS record active without a change in the CVIS number, I can't really think of any significant change. Now, you obviously have to have a program to come back to. If it's your final semester, you wouldn't be able to come back and do CPT. Then we're talking about OPT, as we mentioned earlier. Okay. Other questions? I'm trying to scan the chat for things that were not asked earlier. And again, I'm so sorry for being late again. Embarrassed about that.
I guess for new students, if you're deferring your start to the spring semester, that means that you will most likely not be able to participate in summer internships because for CPT, you do have to be in the US with an active CVIS record for 2 full-time semesters. So I'm hoping that answers your question, Mr. Dunn. If not, send me an email and we can talk about it some more.
Yes. Hello. My name is William, and I have a question. I'm currently, I've just finished all my credits, like the 24 credit requirements for the PhD student. And starting this fall, I'm going to be enrolled typically for my research. And I'm not going to be a GN or a TA. That means I'm going to be sponsored by a fellowship. The fellowship requires me to have a maximum of 6 credit units. That's what it's going to be sponsoring. However, based on the email that you sent to us, it shows that we are supposed to have 9 credit units if we are not GA. Does that still apply, or it's now a different case?
So it is the case that students do need to be enrolled full-time this fall. So if you have a graduate assistantship, 6 credits. If you don't have a if you don't have a graduate assistantship, you need 9 credits. If you have a question about whether your specific fellowship or award may be considered a GA for enrollment purposes, I don't know if you've already done this, but if not, send that to your advisor here and we would look at that. But generally, it needs to be a graduate assistantship to be eligible for 6 credits. I'm not sure if I completely understood your question. It sounds like one that is really specific, so it might be better if you actually email that to us so we can look at it in more detail, though, because I would need to see what fellowship we're looking at, where you're at in your program. So I'm sorry that's a partial answer, but if you can email that information to us, we'll definitely look into it directly for you. And I see also that I think Kate also addressed that in the chat. So other questions at this point? Keep them coming. You can put them in the chat, or if you feel like speaking up, that's totally fine too. It's great. We're going to try to answer what we can.
I guess we might have covered most everything. Oh.
Incoming graduate student. Okay. Oh, I think this is the
Thank you.
question.
I'll try.
I'm just reading that from you, Srijan. New incoming grad student, we will most likely be deferring. Oh, so okay, so it sounds like you have an internship specific to your program. I'm not sure which program that is. And so we would need to look and probably talk to your grad coordinator and find out what they're going to do in terms of scheduling if you start in the spring.
Okay.
So yeah, that's something specific to your degree planning, and I can't say that on the spot. It's another question that would be great if you want to shoot us a quick email, we can look into that. Or I don't know if any of the grad college chat know what program the student is in and might be able to connect them with the right person. MIS, it sounds like. So again, I'm not an expert on the course sequencing for MIS, so we might need to put you in touch with the grad coordinator. I think is that maybe Dr. Moody?
I think it's Dr. Greg Moody.
Oh, yep. Kate just chimed in. Thank you. So I think Dr. Moody would be the right person to answer that. I don't know if maybe one of our advisors can throw the email in the chat or send an email to the student with that information. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Lindsay. So Yufeng Shen had a question about living in the dorm. So I do not exactly know what the precaution or like what the response would be if someone in the dorm does test positive coronavirus. That would be a good question to put towards the housing office. They're the ones who are in charge of all that.
Yeah, I do know that they have some pretty rigorous plans in place. And Ross, if you've heard anything from our ESS meetings, let me know. But I know they have plans in place, I think, to keep everyone very carefully distanced in the dorms. So that it's not going to be like normal situation where you're in cramped quarters. And I'm certain they have protocols in place for quarantining and self-isolating. I mean, they do have protocols in place definitely for quarantine. They've addressed that for new arrivals. So I guarantee they have something planned also for possible test cases. We can definitely look into that. I don't know if we have your email or student. If you want to maybe put your email into the chat, we can follow up.
Or you can send me an email, Yufeng.
Yeah, we'll ask that question for you because I don't know what the specific plan is.
Hey, could I jump in real quick? So there have been lots of meetings about how do we successfully, safely open the campus and dorms. They were talking about contact tracing. I'm not sure what they're using to do that. They talked about all sorts of things if there was an outbreak in the dorms. They're also not having all the dorms be completely full, so they're trying to limit all of that. But it's an ongoing kind of thing. They're also allowing people to get out of their contract if they're going to be 100% remote and they don't want to pay for the dorm room if all their classes are remote. And as the director, I'd like to say, you know, our team has just been frantically trying to do everything we can to inform everyone of these constant changes. It's very challenging, very frustrating. But we also know, like Jason said, how stressful it is for all of you. I just want to give you my word as the executive director and our entire team. We've had great with incredible support from the entire campus, the deans, the provosts, the grad school. All of us are committed to systematically make sure whatever requirements come down the pike, we are going to do everything humanly possible to ensure you have every opportunity to remain in status and not be disrupted. And the entire school is of that mindset. So we don't know exactly what comes down the pike, but I have confidence within reason we will do everything we can to take care of you and keep you informed. So I want you to be as calm as you can be, which is a hard thing to ask everyone to do. It's hard for us because we don't have the answers we'd like to be able to give you. But as soon as we get clarifications, we will update you. And I appreciate everybody being on the call.
Thanks, Ross. And thank you for everyone who was able to join us today. And again, I really apologize for being late. Crazy technical issues. Sorry, someone jump in.
Renee.
Yeah, Jason. Hi, Jason. It's me. I have an incoming student who's on here who I know has been asking questions and is concerned. I don't know if you can address that. It's for Jae Young Kwon. He's been emailing us. He has a visa appointment, but he is still concerned about having the remarks on his I-20, stating that it will be hybrid just because I think in his home country, they're still asking for, or they feel that those remarks are necessary. I've been in contact with him, just trying to let him know that those things, the remarks aren't necessary on the I-20. But I just wanted to pass that over to you if you could address that, if people are still concerned about getting I-20s with those remarks on them.
Thanks, Renee. And that is a great question. So early in the presentation, I mentioned part of the confusion here is that one agency is dealing with this regulatory change in the courts, which happened Tuesday, and then the Department of State is a totally separate agency which runs embassies and consulates outside the U.S., and they're the people that issue the visa. So there was communication. I know I've seen evidence of it, at least earlier this week, saying we need these I-20 remarks. And you have to realize it's going to take some time for Department of State to change its internal policies and memos. That I-20 language should not be required. It should not. That being said, if you're trying to get an appointment and they're still asking you for that as of today, if you meet those enrollment requirements and have that form done, we can still add the remarks onto there. It's not problematic for us to do that. So Renee, I don't know if the student already turned in the form, but if not, if they do turn that in or their enrollment meets that requirement, we can still put it on there. But I would expect that, I don't know when your appointment is, I forgot if you said that, but I think in the coming days, we're going to get clarification from Department of State of whether or not those remarks are needed, or if they should be amended, or if they're only for new students. But it's happening because of a delay in what's happening here versus what embassies and consulates are sending out overseas. So you do not need those remarks per the guidance on Tuesday, but we can still put them in there. If you're on the ground getting asked for it because of this delay, then Renee, we can put that on there if the form has already been completed and signed off.
So I think the student's appointment is next week, and I did get the form, so I'll proceed with getting that I-20 to the student. I just wanted to let some of the students know who might be initial on here that I will be proceeding with emailing the I-20s versus doing that express shipping, especially based on the fact that some of the I-20s need to be received in a pretty quick fashion here. So I will be emailing out, but I just wanted to kind of ease anybody, any students, any initial students who are nervous about getting an I-20 on email. We do have the guidance that says we can do it. They would just need to print it out and sign it, and it would be as good as receiving one in the mail. So I just wanted to also kind of ease some of the students' worries based on that if they're, receiving their I-20s from me via email.
Thank you, Renee. It's very, very useful. I'm sorry, I'm trying to reach out at the same time and make sure things aren't being missed. I did see there was a question about contact with the Master's Transportation Program. I'm not sure if
Dr. Corrigan has already responded.
Great, that's great. And then I saw another one. Someone was asking about deadline for deferring. I think ideally we would, from an immigration perspective, we're going to want to know that before the semester starts. If you're talking about academic deferral, then that's something you should contact your grad coordinator and the grad college about, I think. And I'm not sure what the deadline is for that. For the I-20, we can do that up until the semester beginning without issue. And that's probably better as we figure out over the next couple of weeks what the situation is really going to be for initial students trying to enter this fall. All right. Any other last questions? I think that more or less covers things. If we didn't get to your question, I apologize. We're trying to watch chat at the same time. If you still have a follow-up question, you can absolutely email us anytime. Like I said, we're still here, if not physically, remotely, so you can have an advising appointment with us, email us, whatever the case might be. So please stay in touch, follow social media, watch for emails. I promise we'll get you the information as fast as we can once we digest it and it comes out. And I want to wish you all a very happy weekend and stay safe and healthy and stay sane. Anything else you guys wanted to add?
We actually just got a last minute question. So we are allowed to email I-20s right now, so we do not need to physically ship I-20s to students, even if they're staying in their home country in the fall. So the email one, as long as you print it out, you are good to go.
Yep, so those are online for now. Well, thank you so much for everyone, and also thank you to our graduate college colleagues for helping out. Really appreciate you joining us, and let us know if you have questions. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.